Thank you, Carl. So this research builds on research that we did on the 21st century public servant, and we published that research and people said, great, this is interesting, but if we're changing and becoming more entrepreneurial and becoming connected with our communities, how are councillors changing? Are they on this journey as well? Have you spoken to them? And we sort of thought, well, actually we haven't really spoken to them, so let's do that. So this research builds on interviews that we did with councillors about how they see their role as changing. So part of that is about the new relationships with citizens, and I think a lot of you know a lot about that, and it builds on what Jackie said, that citizens have got different expectations, and also the financial landscape means that we have to have different expectations maybe as councils about what can be done. So I think that's one of the big contextual challenges, is what's happening to relationships with citizens. But it's also about there's no money anymore, and we're kind of in this boat and we don't know where we're going. And I think if you're in a great council, and Kirklees sounds like a great council, maybe there's a sort of story about where you're going. But for a lot of councils, I think there's been a state of panic, balancing the budget, lack of an ability to have the space to think. So that's part of the story here as well. Relationships with officers are changing. That's one of the things that came out of our research, is that there's more blurring, I think, about who speaks for this place. So particularly if you've got more neighbourhood working, that can put some really interesting new relationships in place, and some councillors I think will love that and be comfortable with it, but it can create some tensions around who knows this area best and who speaks for it. And then there's also issues about place and scale and how that's changing, and the devolution deals which are around maybe mean that the way we think about place and the place that we belong to is slightly different. And that can be happening at both ends of the scale, if you like, so maybe more going on at that kind of regional level, but if we're doing more place-based working and councillors are working really actively and being allowed to be innovators in their space, then there's more going on at that local level as well. So 3 real messages from our research then that councillors engage with when they were thinking about ways forward. Usually when I present this, it's a conversation, so this feels like a kind of slightly artificial setting for it, but I'd love to have that conversation during the rest of the day. But these were some of the roles that councillors told us that they were undertaking. So this notion maybe, you're not able to push a button anymore and make things happen, that it's not that productive to use your casework to make sure that an individual's bin gets collected. Actually, we need to be thinking much more creatively and innovatively, and lots of great councillors are about how we're orchestrators, advocates, entrepreneurs, thinking about, well, how do we make things happen in creative spaces outside some of those formal channels if the money's been turned off for those formal channels to make things work. So there were some really great ideas about how this could happen, but a sense that perhaps not all councillors are comfortable about being in that space where it's about being more entrepreneurial and thinking about working differently with communities. So how do we encourage other councillors maybe that are not in that place to think differently about their jobs? And partly this is about getting people into local government. The people who aren't here on a snowy Saturday because they really love it, how do we get them to be more interested in a career as an elected member? And that is partly about the diversity. One of the councillors described diversity as a fourth bridge issue. You never crack it. You've got to keep on it all the time to try and think about how do we get people into local government who represent the communities that they're speaking for. So there's a diversity aspect, and when we get them in there, how do we make sure that we sort of train and support them to have really productive careers as councillors, and also maybe to think about life after a councillor. What are the sort of transferable skills that we're building for people? So this is a really useful, meaningful role that they can use as though in their own kind of life development, career development, rather than us having to rely on people who've just got, for other reasons, have got kind of a bit of space in their lives. How do we help other people with different sets of skills make the space to become a councillor? And then, what are some of those sort of skills that we need to build around that? What are some of the kind of member development events? That sounds a bit boring in this kind of very buzzy creative space. You probably not interested in member development sessions, but if we were, what are some of the kind of skills that we might try and develop in there? And some of the skills that councillors were articulating in our interviews were around speed reading, chairing a meeting, financial capabilities, some of the kind of nuts and bolts type of stuff, but some of it was about saying, well, I want to work more on social media, and my council runs media training, but actually it's not just about the kind of work my smartphone, it's about what kind of conversations does social media make possible, and how do I make sure that I'm kind of open for that, and I recognise, well, maybe that is going to make it harder for me to put boundaries around my life and to say kind of what's public and what's private, and how do I make sure that I'm able to do that in a way that I'm comfortable with and that my family are comfortable with and doesn't demand too much of me. So one of the councillors we spoke to said, I feel like so much of my life is in the public domain already. I'm really uncomfortable with going on Twitter and kind of making even more of it public and open and up for discussion. So can you just go back one? And I think this picture, I don't know if you can see, it's a bit blurry, but the rhino I thought was a great illustration in that bottom left corner of the need for a sort of thick skin, that councillors feel that, when your job involves, it takes sort of 2 hours to get around the supermarket because people are coming over and saying, what about this and what about this, then we need to get people into that job who are kind of willing to take on everything that comes with it, and then the kind of rhino hide that you need to do that. Thanks. So I'll leave it there, but I'd love to have more of a conversation about it.